Hi, I'm Gabogrecan and I'm going to show you how I have started from the very beginning to complete a painting. At the moment you can see me stretching silk onto my screen. I have a particular screen that's a bit different to others, and it's got little picos on the end, little brass pins if you like, and the silk is only handled at each end, which sort of unfortunately means there's a fair bit of movement in the middle of a long scarf like this, but it just makes it more difficult for drawing. I'm now pouring gutta from the big container into the little one that I draw with. Gutta's a liquid rubber, and you have to put the top on immediately and use a tissue to hold over the little fine needle-like tip between being used so that the air won't dry it out. You can see here I've just put a stand in underneath the silk and my drawing so that I can see through the silk to get the drawing correct. It's a very fine line that I'm drawing. I tend to be a fine artist in the true sense of the word, and there's a lot of detail, and the gutta line has to be very fine. You've got to be careful that you don't press too heavily so that the little needle head pierces the silk, and you can't lean on the silk, so you have a lot of pressure on your arms holding your pen, everything else quite firmly, and I actually get sore shoulders doing this, but then I'm a bit older than a lot of you, and please excuse the terrible looking work clothes I wear, but it's better to have old clothes than good ones if you splash dyes on yourself. Gradually you build up your design. When you finish the actual drawing with the gutta, it is a bit sticky, so I put a heater on it just to dry it off before I start actually painting, and I always paint the background first, as you'll see in a moment. You can see that the silk moves quite considerably while you're drawing on it, and also because you're looking downwards and at a bit of an angle at the drawing underneath, it sometimes gives you a different vision, so that your line work that you're drawing on top doesn't exactly meet the line work underneath, and you've got to be aware of that and accommodate it by knowing your design well enough to make it work if you don't quite match up the drawing underneath. I'm now signing my piece. I think a lot of beginner artists forget to sign their work. It is a branding, and it is important for the recipients of the work to know that it is signed by the artist. Now I'm adding water to the silk. I use a fair bit of water. I wet all the area I'm about to colour, because it actually slows down the movement of the dyes. They don't madly run into each other as they will do if the silk is dry. It's only a slow reduction of movement or speed of the dye moving. And I'm doing this background blue, and I'm using 3 blues. So I put the first one on and I just do irregular line type shapes. It's just really freehand, so you never do 2 the same. I'm adding the second blue on now, beginning to fill in some of the white. Now the third colour, and you'll see in a moment I lift the edge of the silk there because it's got a rolled edge, and sometimes the dye doesn't quite penetrate fully underneath, so you've just got to make sure you do that. Now I add water and move across all the colours so that they're actually helping them all to merge together to be a softer pattern. But you've got to do this fairly quickly and not press too hard or become muddy looking. I'm now adding salt to the background. Now salt actually draws the colour towards it and creates some really interesting patterns as it dries. Quite effective actually. So I tend to, in my style of work, always put the salted area in the background. So I always paint the background first and I add the salted area next. And here I'm just making the little pieces in between the drawing that are still background match up with the colours that are in the background. It's fiddly, time consuming, and because it's so tiny an area, it is easy to have a little bleed of colour jumping the line or your brush accidentally going over the line. But that's part and parcel of this sort of work, and I always sort of, when I put the final colour on the motif, I just make sure if there is a slight bleed that it blends in and works with it. Even in these smaller areas, I always use at least 2 and sometimes 3 of the blues. If you just use 1, it tends to sort of flatten out and doesn't give you quite as much artistic interest as what the mixture of colours will be. just using a little bit of water there to help blend those colours that I've just added. And now you've got to be really careful putting the salt in here because the area is so small, and sometimes a piece of salt will jump across like there, and I've just moved it back, but sometimes as it jumps across it pulls the colour with it into the motif where you don't want it. Now the whole thing is dry and I'm removing the salt. You use the salt again. I tend to put my blue colours that the salt lands on in one container, and if I'm doing reds and oranges and that where the salt is, I put it in another container so that I'm keeping the blues together and the warmer colours together. So you just keep brushing till you get all the salt off, and particularly around the motif that you've got to paint, make sure there's no tiny little bits of half melted salt there. You can start to see as I'm removing this salt the pattern that the salt's created in the background. Now I'm ready to paint the motif, and this little orchid, even though it's pink, the pink is a bit darker towards the centre of it, so I put the pink on around the centre part of each shape that's already had water so it doesn't move too quickly. Then I use more water and just push some of that colour up into the white of the silk. Now in my opinion that's still a bit flat, so I use another colour to add a bit of depth around that centre bit again, and also right on the tips you can see I just add a little bit there, and then again water to rub that bit in as well to make sure it's sort of softened in. I'm now using another sort of purpley colour, purpley pink, to do some of the detail work in the centre of the orchid. I'm now taking a bit of artistic license here, and I'm doing the leaves around the flowers in the background. I'm doing them orange and lemon. Now orange and pink work beautifully together, and lemon just gives it a bit of a boost, and it sort of, in my way of thinking, it pulls the design together and allows it and the blue background to not only show out but to blend in, if that makes sense. Most of the most of the motif shapes don't have any water and are pure colours, just orange or yellow. But in this bigger leaf, I actually blend the lemon and the orange together a little bit on the edges particularly, and later on you'll see how well that works in a blending effect. There it is. I've finished the painting. It's still a bit wet, but it works quite well, I think. Hope you do too. Look at the lovely pattern in the background, and there's the finished scarf just hanging there. And once it's washed and ironed and everything, the colours just come up absolutely stunning. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy your scarf.